My name is Davin Sturdivant, and in this AiM LearnFast video, we will learn how to read split reports in Race Studio. So I race competition cards, and I'm also a writer for Cart Pulse, which is designed to gather information about the sport of karting and put it into an easy to find place. So when I got in touch with Roger Cadell, who's the national trainer for AiM Sport, we decided to put together some videos about how to use karting data in Race Studio. We've broken them up into these little mini vignettes, hopefully to make it easy to consume. But if you have questions about whatever we cover, just leave a comment below and we'll put it in another video. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger and take it from there. So Roger, there are many different ways to look at data, and some people like to look at it graphically, and some people like to look at it numerically. And in Race Studio, there are several reports that numerically can confirm what I already have seen in the measures graph. Can we look at one of those, let's say like a split report, and just show some of the value you can get from that?
Yeah, exactly. We have 8, 10, 15 different tools that we can look at data, right? So, of course, the measures graph is the most popular, and done some videos on that already. But there are a bunch of different ways of looking at data. Let's open up a test, and we'll start to go towards that split report and understand how much time the driver put in certain sections of the track for each lap. So. We're going to open up David's Heat Racer here again, as we've done in some of the other videos. And Race Studio, what it does is it always opens up where you last closed it. And so in this particular case, what I was last looking at was a measures graph, and with the speed trace and the engine RPM, up and visible for us. So and this is all good, and we can look at across and look at our different lap times down across the bottom, the 111 and 111 and so on, and we can get some basic things, and the speed at the end of the back straightaway and some of those things that we've talked about. But to actually break down the track into pieces and then look at those segments in a segment report is really easily done with the AiM software. Of course, the first thing you need to have done is you need to break the track up into those segments, with a track map. And we've already done, and folks can go back and look at another video we did on creating of a track map. But the basics of it are, if you come up to the map pull-down menu and you click on New, it basically takes the track as shown here, and it breaks it up into these 3 different colored segments. And greens are typically straightaways, left-handers are blue segments, and right-handers are red. And we create those based on lateral G's and rollout distance, and even some GPS information. So we've already built one for this track, so I'm just going to go ahead and cancel out of this, and you'll recognize this track here in just a second. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And then I'm going to turn on the track map, the one that we've already got built, which is very close to what we just did. And so what you'll see here is there's a track map, and the track map is broken up into these segments. And as a user, we can break these any way we want to. It allowed the computer just to do it, to its defaults here in this case. But you can see that the front straightaway here is a green segment, and then your first turn was a blue, number 1, and the same segment colors are up here across the top of the measures graph. Okay, so what we want to do is, if we want to know how long we spent in turn 6, this red 100, a little greater than 180-degree right-hander, we can go up and we have a report that's called a split report, and we can click on that guy. And now you can see every lap that the driver did, run 1, lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, lap 4, and then here in that green segment, which is this from the start finish line to the first turn, straightaway, greens are straightaways, you can see how long the driver spent in each of these different segments. And then the blue highlighted one is the fastest segment for each one.
Well, but Roger, this one doesn't look quite right because all of the fastest times are up in the first lap. They're all up front.
Yeah, and the first lap is the out lap. So when you first open up a test and you're looking at it, the software does not it has reported in a couple of spots. We're going to look at those in a second, but that's the out lap. So that was when the driver left the paddock area, drove out onto the track, and did this. If you look at it, it's a 36-second first lap, when the normal laps, or the fastest lap was a fastest full lap was a 1 minute 11 seconds. So we've got some bogus laps in here. We've got our out lap, we got our warm up lap, and then we actually started racing, and then we've got this little short one here at the end, a 104, where it wasn't a full lap as well. So the way that you do this, there are a couple of quick ways to take care of this problem. The uh, the the easiest way is where you can see it all is you come down with your mouse and go right to the lap manager tab, and if you click on that guy, it shows all of your laps from the session we have open. And this lap cause column is kind of an important thing. It's how the software is showing you, how that lap was generated. The bulk of these are GPS lap managed, which means that lap was started by being triggered by a GPS lap coordinate, start finish line. And then as you came back across, it ended by another, and then of course starting the next lap, but based on that GPS coordinate. The lap cause for this first one is called the first lap. That means it's the out lap. That means when it started recording data when it's seen RPM, and then the end of that little session is end of that lap is when it was triggered by a GPS coordinate. So that little 36 seconds is really a bogus lap for a split report. So what we can do is come in, you can highlight it, and then you can disable that lap. And boom, there's a little red X on it, right? And then of course the last lap, that basically, that first lap is basically our out lap, right? You left the pits, you went your half a lap or however long before you crossed the start finish line. And then we have an in lap at the end, which is we call a vehicle stop, which means it was triggered by a start finish line, and then when the data logger was stopped recording because it stopped seeing RPM because of a shutdown. So we want to disable that one as well. So if we highlight that one, we can click on the disable lap button as well. Okay, all of that is a long way of doing it, right? So we do have an automated process for that. And if up here in the upper right hand corner, there's this little wrench. That's our options for this particular screen. I'm going to click on that. And what you can see is the set lap view button, and it's automatically disable all laps not coming from a lap marker.
Oh.
So I'm going to turn on these and click on OK. And you're going to, it automatically, by the way, it shuts down the lap manager tab and reopens it back up where we were. But now you can see that if I had not have already disabled those would have been disabled just automatically when you opened up your test.
Oh, that makes sense.
So and it remembers that setting. So even though you close down this session of analysis, you go out, you run your cart again, you come back over, you download data. When you come back in here, your first and vehicle stop laps are going to be already disabled.
Oh, that's
so
really nice.
that's a really handy tool for those that want to make sure that that step comes naturally.
Yeah, and now we're sure that none of the kind of bogus laps are being calculated when I'm looking at my reports. So, maybe maybe even in certain cases, lap 2, which is the warm-up lap, we may want to deactivate because even though it's counted as a GPS lap, right, it's going to be kind of bogus because it's way slower than my racing laps. So
yeah, you can see that it's actually a minute 35, right?
Right.
So even after you take your actual half laps, your in and out lap out, then scan your laps themselves, just like you mentioned, and boom, there's a 37.5. Really, we don't want that to be part of a nice report on our split report, right? So at that point, then you manually go through this and say, okay, which one should I take away?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and disable that one. I've been showing you to highlight it and click disable laps, but another shortcut is to just highlight it and right click on it. And you get a little submenu that comes up and gives you the opportunity to disable the lap too.
But the other thing, the other thing you might think about too, or you might agree there too, is on the first lap you might want to keep that lap because you might want to see how quick you were on the opening lap. And so some people might just go, well, I only want to see the laps that are closest to the fastest lap or closer to the ones where I'm running fast. But that first lap is still a acknowledged lap of if I was quick on that open lap, even though it's not going to be up to full speed, I could have opened up a gap to somebody, or I could have caught up to somebody. Even if I was starting mid pack, for example, if I have a fast opening lap, I can overtake a lot of people on that first lap, right?
Yeah, perfect point. And I like where you're going with that, because it's really if you want to work on and different. I've worked with a lot of drivers where they actually get fairly good once the tires get warm, and everything is going well, but yet they don't start off well. right? As the tires are not quite so well and not warmed up yet. And in that case, I say leave that lap in the view of what you're going to take a look at, because that's what you want to study, right? So as you're doing your analysis and you're thinking, okay, what pieces do I want to work on? What pieces of my driving or my cart setup, or and if it is getting up to speed on cold tires, well, yeah, absolutely, we should leave that one in there. So in this case, we'll leave it shut off. The other one I want to show you here before we leave here is all of these columns across the top. Let's say that we even want to fine tune this even more. You can just click on the lap time heading, and it sorts these by the ascending and descending just by clicking on it once. It's from the slowest to the fastest. Clicking on it again, it's from the fastest down to the slowest. So you can easily come in and say, let's say we didn't even want this, we wanted to get rid of everything but the 11s, right? Mm-hmm. You could come in and with normal Windows functionality, you click on one, you come down and you click on the shift key, and you can highlight all of those, right click and disable those laps. I'm going to leave them go, so I'm not going to do that. But remember, you can click on any of these columns and sort by those as well. So kind of a handy tool. So okay, so we've got the laps that we want to have disabled. There's one other little feature that we'll talk about real quickly. See how these red X's? Those are just the disabled laps, right? Over here in the upper right-hand corner, you've got a little checkbox. If you don't even want to see those anymore, you can click on this view only enabled laps, and now just the ones that are actually going to be used in your reports actually even show. It even hides the ones with the red X. We can always come back, uncheck that, and get to the laps that we want to see. So personal preference, leave that checked if you want to.
Sure.
Okay, let's jump back to the split report now that we've disabled a few laps, and let's take a look at it again. Okay. So now we're just down to we've got that 13.5, which was really the second lap of the second flyer, right?
Right.
And then the way this report actually works is you've got this upper area here, which is lap 3 in this case, which was the second flyer. That out lap was number 1, up through lap 11. The fastest segments of each of these segments that that the track is broken up into, as we did a little bit ago, is highlighted in blue. So your fastest front straightaway time in this particular session, this David's heat race, his best time down the straightaway was on his very last, lap, right? The heading down, the beginning of his last lap. It's the first segment of his last lap. And then his best turn 1, which was this left-hander, was actually on his third, of the laps we're looking at, and so forth. And you can look and take a look at where these blues land. And what I like to do, a little tip for everybody, is look at the layout of those blue segments, those fastest segments. If you have most of these are in this first third of the heat race, it might show that either the driver's got a qualifying mentality or the cart is set up with a qualifying type of a setup.
Oh, yeah.
The cart is faster in the early piece. Mm-hmm. What I like about what I see here, this is a great race setup, right? So there are some where the blue is in the very first lap. There are some where the blues are in the last lap. In fact, there's 4 of them on this last lap. So maybe the cart's getting better towards the end, but it is spread around a lot. That's a good racing cart setup. So those are something I like to take a look at pretty quickly myself. Okay. Then we add up all those blue segments. And we end up with what we call a theoretical best lap. The driver did, from start finish line to start finish line, this 111.328 on lap 5, right? If we take each of these little segment pieces and we add them all up, the best theoretical is a 110.502. Okay. Some people really like to put a lot of weight into the best theoretical lap. Some people don't care about it at all. I'm somewhere in between. But you'll never get there.
Right.
You can never, because as soon as you go a little bit faster, the best theoretical is going to get quicker.
Right.
Some people will say what they really are shooting for is the smallest difference between those two. Yeah, that's valid. I'm okay with that. But there are other things in this report that I tend to jump towards. We'll talk about those in a moment. The one last lap time that we do provide in the split report is a huge tool to me. Is we have what we call the best rolling lap. It's highlighted yellow, and what that is certainly all of these lap times we have here, this 13 and this 12 and this 11, were from start finish line, right here at the start finish line, the GPS coordinate that we saved, back to the GPS coordinate again. Okay. The best theoretical, of course, is putting together all the little pieces. And the best rolling lap, however, is a lap time that you actually drove, but it started in this particular case, it started at the end of lap 10, segment 10, I should say. So it starts right here when they're down here by our map. And then the driver drove through 11 all the way around straight through the start finish line and back to the end of segment 10. And that the driver actually drove that lap time, which in this case is a 111.2. Okay, 111.21. The driver actually drove it, just not from start finish to start finish. So if there's a lot of traffic, or it's a race, or it's a warm up, when you never did quite get a good clean lap, you can hang your hat on this 111.2 and say the cart's capable of that because we actually did it, right?
Yeah.
So the best rolling lap is a very powerful tool. So always keep that in mind as well.
And that's actually something good to bring up, like you say, especially when you're on a busy track day or we're dealing with traffic where, I've had, especially in qualifying or something like that, where I feel like I could have nailed a really good lap, but I got caught up in the last sector, or, I had a really good run right before the last corner of the last lap, and then I got caught up right at the end, where then I can look at that best rolling lap and know, okay, I might have qualified sixth, but my best rolling lap was maybe third. So I have a cart that could fight for those rows, or in the first lap, as long as I get a clean first lap, I could be onto something, right? That is encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where, yeah, I may have qualified sixth, but then you look at your best rolling lap and it's second or third, and you go, well, okay, I'm not gonna make a huge chassis adjustment,
right?
Because you know what, I actually do got a pretty good cart.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I caught the wrong things, or I made a mistake in one corner, something to that effect.
I actually had that happen in a race once where I was stuck up in traffic, and so I was behind a guy, and my lap times were a lot slower than what I've run by myself. But at the end of the race, I looked at my best rolling lap, and my best rolling lap was like second fastest, something like that, right? So it was encouraging because there had been times where I had to gap the guy or I had to get back up to him, and so from sector to sector, I was as fast as the leaders. It just reminded me that, like, oh, I need to make sure I qualify a bit better, or oh, I need to make sure my starts are stronger because I was stuck, or there was some other variable that was affecting my lap time. So I didn't just look at that lap time I actually ran in the race and go, oh, I'm slow, right? It was like, okay, yeah, there's another area that I need to work on of maybe my racecraft because my speed is thereabouts. It was just, I need to work on this thing. Right?
There you go, perfect. And that's the power of data, is even though you were stuck behind him, there were segments where you were doing the right things, and data can help you find those, right? And if not, it's a mental thing. Okay, well, yeah, you look at your lap times, they weren't that great. You can't think back and say, okay, well, the card actually was pretty good. I was just stuck behind him, and I need to learn how to pass a little better, or work on ways of setting up a pass a little bit better. So the split report's a very powerful tool for that. So one other area that I have found myself using in the split report more than anything else, it's these statistical numbers that are down here across the bottom. They're in green. They may not show up very well on the screen capture, but the minimum value, maximum value, average value, and standard deviation. These are numbers that I actually use quite a bit. Let's just go through the first column here. And of course, the minimum value is the blue highlighted area we've already talked about. The maximum, that is the slowest of all of the different laps that we have active in our test. The average, the math, we just do the math and give you the average of the segments. And then the one that I look at, that kind of takes all of those into account, is standard deviation. And that's a mathematical term. We won't go too deeply here, but what I have found when I scan this row of data, what I'm looking for is a 0.0 something. Okay, and that's kind of what you ought to be shooting for. So if we look at David's data here from the heat race, 0.06, pretty consistent in that. It's a straightaway, yeah, but pretty consistent. 0.11. Okay, let's just kind of scan across ones. There's a 0.4, so corner 3 here is pretty good. 1.2, 1.3, and if we scan along, you look at these, and a whole bunch of zeros here at the second or the back half of the track. So really consistent across there. So you find that largest one, and there's a 15, right? So you find that 15, which is turn number 6. So we go down here and look at turn number 6. This corner here is the area that this driver has the least consistency in, right?
Mm.
Based on our standard deviation. So this is one of those kind of tools that it's not necessarily telling us why, but it's telling us what happened and it's telling us where it happened. And so we can just scan this really quickly, look for a 0.0s. If you find one or two that are larger, like this 1.5, find out where it's at, and then jump back into the data and go look at that corner, or go into your memory and say, okay, well, what was why am I yeah, I am kind of struggling there when you think back about it, right? So that is one of the tools that I like the most, is the standard deviation, to find those areas that where you just the consistency of running is not great. It will read a little bit weird sometimes if you are in a race where you're actually somebody's holding you up at times, but certainly when you're out there running along, it's a great tool.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
And then the one last thing that I do get a few people ask about, I'm going to slide this down just a touch. This entire area down here across the bottom, all this is the exact same data that's in the table above, except that we've done the math for you. So what we've done is we've taken the fastest lap, and you'll notice these are all zeroed out. And then all of these other segments are negative for being faster than your fastest lap, and positive numbers for when you're the other direction. So this, if you come down here and you're looking at in the upper half, and you look at your best lap, and you did a 21.6 and I did a 25.2, and you have to do the math, 4 point, whatever. You can come down here and you can do that same thing, and it does the math for you at 0.365. Right. So some people love to see the actual differences, and some people love to see the raw numbers. So we've written the report to give you both ways. So. But that's the split report. That is one of those tools where we tell you, we don't quite answer the why, which is all important to us when we're talking about data. Why did something happen? But it really does gets us clear on the areas that where we were fast. If our fast segments are spread apart quite a bit, and we've talked in this little in this video about how to disable some laps to get this report to mean a bunch for us, and a very, very powerful tool. So, the only thing you have to remember is we have to have a map generated in order to use this tool. So when you come up to click on the icon for the split time analysis and it's grayed out, the reason is you do not have a track map built yet, so you just have to build that. So split report, very powerful tool. I hope everybody uses it.
That's the end of this AiM LearnFast video. Leave a comment below if you have any questions, or if you want us to cover another topic. Visit aimsports.com if you want to learn more about Micron products.